The floor-to-ceiling windows of Nathan Pierce's penthouse stretched like a glossy canvas of glass, framing the Manhattan skyline in shades of morning steel and gold. Below, the city stirred, taxis threading the streets like circuits, stock tickers already buzzing in buildings Nathan had helped shape with deals and decimal points. From his place at the top, it was all his, or might as well have been. Nathan sipped his black coffee, untouched by cream or sentiment. He liked his mornings quiet, predictable. That's why Sundays were sacred. No meetings, no boardroom fires to put out. Just him, his laptop, and the Westlake acquisition file glowing on the screen. Mr. Pierce. The home assistant's smooth voice echoed into the room, cool and efficient. Like everything in his life, there is a visitor at the main entrance. Nathan didn't look up. I'm not expecting anyone. Tell security to handle it. There's a small visitor. That gave him pause. He frowned, turning to the nearest console. Show me. The lobby feed flickered to life. A little girl stood there, 6, maybe 7. Her blonde hair was tied into crooked pigtails, as if she'd done them herself. A pink backpack hung from her shoulders, slightly too large, and she shifted from foot to foot, nervous but stubborn, alone. Nathan's chest prickled with unease. Is she with someone? Security reports no accompanying adult. The assistant confirmed. Something about her struck a chord. Not recognition, exactly, but a thrum in the back of his brain. A memory he couldn't name. Still, this wasn't his problem. Send someone to help her find her parents. Yes, Mr. Pierce. He turned back to his laptop, fingers hovering over the keyboard, but he couldn't type. His mind kept drifting back to those eyes, wide and clear and oddly familiar. 15 minutes later, his private elevator chimed. He didn't move right away. The elevator was keycard access only. No one got up unless he allowed it. Sir, came the voice of his head of security through the intercom. The child insists she needs to see you, personally, says her name is Lily. He exhaled. I don't know any. She's very persistent. Says it's an emergency, about her mother. A beat passed. Send her up, he said, against every instinct. The elevator doors parted with a quiet sigh. Out stepped a little girl in sparkly sneakers and a jacket with a unicorn zipper pull. She looked around the penthouse, her blue eyes wide, but not in awe, in curiosity. She was brave. She was uninvited. She was familiar in a way that made Nathan's stomach twist. Hello, he said awkwardly, standing. I'm told your name is Lily. She nodded, hands gripping her backpack tighter. Are you Nathan Pierce? I am. What can I help you with? She took a deep breath, like she was about to jump into a pool. My mommy said I should never come here, but I had to, because she's been crying for 3 days. And we don't have any more money for ice cream or rent. His brows drew together. I'm sorry to hear that, but who is your mother? Rebecca Mitchell. She said .time still Rebecca Mitchell, the analyst from the numbers department. Brilliant, quiet, gone without warning during the Meridian merger 5 years ago. Nathan stared. And why? He said carefully, are you here about your mother? Lily looked up at him, chin tilting, tears gathering in those impossibly blue eyes. Daddy, you fired Mommy. He didn't move. Couldn't. That word, Daddy, hung in the air like a dropped bomb. He looked at her again, really looked. The blonde hair, the shape of her face, but it was the eyes piercing, Arctic blue, that stopped him cold. His eyes reflected back at him from every magazine cover, mirror, and now this child. That's not possible, he whispered, but he was already counting backward. 6 years, 9 months, Rebecca, they're brief, impossible, perfect mistake. Lily pulled something from her backpack and held it out. A photograph, grainy, printed from a phone, Rebecca in a hospital bed, holding a newborn swaddled in pink. Mommy said, I should never bother you, Lily added, her voice small but firm. But you fired her last week, and now she cries all the time. The air in the penthouse shifted. Growing thin, he built a life on numbers, projections, power plays. But nothing in any of his models had accounted for the little girl now, standing in his home, in his world, calmly dismantling the foundation of everything he thought he knew, his daughter. The photograph trembled in Nathan's hand. He couldn't seem to stop staring at it. Rebecca in a hospital gown, hair plastered to her forehead, cradling a newborn with swollen eyes and flushed cheeks. The woman he remembered had been composed, sharp, always poised. This was someone raw with emotion, captured in a moment of birth, solitude, an unspoken betrayal, and the baby had his eyes. "Do you live with your mother?" he asked quietly, trying to keep his voice steady. Lily nodded. "In an apartment. It's small. Mommy says we might have to move if we don't find a new job soon, but I told her I'd help. That's why I came here." Nathan sat down slowly, knees buckling beneath the weight of a truth he hadn't been prepared for. She came here, alone, a 6-year-old girl navigating New York's subway system to reach him. "How did you find me?" Lily blinked, like the answer was obvious. "You're famous. Your picture is on the building downstairs, and I asked Siri." Nathan didn't know whether to laugh or be horrified. "You can't just come to strangers' homes, Lily." She frowned. "But you're not a stranger. You're my dad." The words hit him harder than he expected. Simple, unquestioning. Final dot. He was still staring at her when the elevator chimed again. "Sir." His assistant's voice echoed through the intercom. "A woman named Rebecca Mitchell is downstairs. She appears distressed. Should I send her up?" Nathan's breath caught. "Yes." Immediately, he turned back to Lily, who had begun wandering through his living room, pausing to inspect the marble fireplace, the leather-bound books arranged in color order, the crystal sculpture shaped like an abstract bowl. "Are you rich?" she asked without turning. He hesitated. "I suppose so. My friends always says rich people are always lonely," Lily said. "Are you lonely?" Before he could answer, the elevator door slid open, and there she was. Rebecca Mitchell stood in the doorway, chest heaving, eyes wild, her sweater clinging to her as if she'd run the entire way. Her gaze snapped to Lily first, dropping her handbag as she rushed forward. "Oh my God! Oh my God!" Lily ran to her. "Mommy, I found him. I told you I could." Rebecca sank to her knees, arms wrapping tightly around her daughter. "You cannot do this, Lily. You cannot run off. I told you never to." "I had to," Lily said simply. "You were sad. I fixed it." Nathan stood frozen, unsure where to put his hands, his eyes, his rage. "Rebecca," he said, low and hoarse. Her eyes lifted to him. Whatever softness was there vanished in an instant, replaced with a steel-cold fury that reminded him exactly why he'd once been so drawn to her. "What were you thinking?" she hissed. "Letting her up here. I didn't let her. She showed up alone, at my door. I had no idea. You didn't know because you never bothered to ask." She was on her feet now, still clutching Lily with one hand, her other trembling. "You knew I left. You didn't call. You didn't write. You didn't care. I didn't know you were pregnant," he snapped, his voice rising despite himself. "If I had, but you didn't, because I came to your office the day I found out, and you were on the phone with the board, talking about the Meridian deal. I heard you say, nothing will stand in the way of this merger. Not distractions, not people, certainly not me." The memory flared suddenly in Nathan's mind. A moment of vague recognition, a flash of her silhouette outside the glass wall. Gone before he could hang up the call. Rebecca looked exhausted, older, stronger, more haunted. "I resigned and disappeared. I raised her on my own. I built a life with nothing from you. And now you fire me?" Nathan's mouth opened. "That wasn't me." She was crying in the bathroom for hours. Lily interjected suddenly, her voice small. "After the layoff, I heard her tell Aunt Sarah we wouldn't have rent next month." Rebecca's eyes welled. She pulled Lily closer. "I was targeted, wasn't I?" she said to Nathan. Quieter now. "This wasn't a random layoff." Nathan's jaw clenched. "I don't know. I need to look into it. Don't bother." She spat. "I know how this works. I worked in analytics, Nathan. I know." A thick silence fell over the room. Lily, sensing the change, tugged on her mother's hand. "Can we go?" "Yes," Rebecca said. "We're leaving?" "No." Nathan stepped forward. "You don't just drop this on me and walk away. She's my daughter. You don't get to claim her now. I didn't get the chance to." Their voices were low now, taut with years of unspoken bitterness. "I need to talk to you," he said. "Alone?" Rebecca knelt. "Lily, sweetheart, go sit on the couch, okay? Just for a minute." As the little girl wandered away, still clutching her backpack, the adults faced off once more. "You have no idea what it's been like," Rebecca said. "Late rent, medical bills, daycares I couldn't afford, and always watching over my shoulder. Because if anyone knew she was yours, why? Why keep it secret? Because your world is made of sharks, Nathan, you know it, and mine. It's made of her. Nathan couldn't argue. Not yet. I didn't know. He said again, softer now. But now I do, and that changes everything. Rebecca stared at him, her eyes unreadable. Does it? In the silence that followed, Nathan turned to look at Lily, now curled up on his white leather couch, playing with the frayed strap on her backpack. Her presence had shattered the immaculate order of his life in less than an hour, and yet, for the first time in years, he didn't feel alone. He felt alive. Rebecca exhaled. I'll give you 1 week, she said finally. You want to be in her life? Prove it. But you stay out of mine. Nathan nodded slowly, but in the back of his mind, something else was stirring, something darker, because if Rebecca had been targeted, if someone knew about Lily, then the layoff hadn't been an accident. It had been a warning, and Nathan Pierce wasn't the kind of man who took kindly to threats, especially when they came for his blood. Nathan Pierce sat in the back seat of his Blacktown car, staring out the tinted window, but not seeing the streets of Manhattan race past. His mind was stuck, looping over the last 3 hours like a bad algorithm. A daughter, 6 years of her life, gone in the rearview mirror of decisions he hadn't known he was making. Or had he? Rebecca's accusations echoed in his head. Her eyes had been filled with fire and exhaustion, the kind of rage that only came from years of carrying weight alone. He'd always admired her brilliance, but now he realized what else had been hidden behind the quiet confidence, ferocity, sacrifice, love, and a secret Lily. His daughter had his eyes. That alone was enough to destroy everything he thought he knew. The car pulled up in front of Pierce Tower. The doorman greeted him with a crisp nod. The security guard snapped to attention. Inside the mirrored elevators, his reflection stared back at him like a stranger in an expensive suit. He was supposed to be reviewing the final documents for the Westlake acquisition, the deal of the quarter, possibly the year. But none of that mattered now, because someone had known. Someone inside his company had known that Rebecca was more than a former analyst, that she was the mother of his child, and they had fired her, not laid off. Fired, Natalie, he said, into his earpiece as the elevator doors opened to the executive floor. I need every piece of documentation on Rebecca Mitchell's termination, full HR packet, and get me access logs from last month. Who requested the restructure, and when? Yes, Mr. Pierce. He entered his office like a man on a warpath, bypassing his desk and going straight to the wall safe. Inside was a locked cabinet with restricted personnel files, the real ones, not the redacted corporate archives. 20 minutes later, he had his answer. Rebecca's name was listed on the final wave of budget cuts. But that wasn't the damning part. The signatory approving her exit, Thomas Harrington, CFO, his oldest associate, his friend, his betrayer. Thomas had been with him since the beginning, Princeton roommate turned corporate tactician, the numbers guide to Nathan's visionary drive. Thomas had been there when Pierce Investments was 3 interns and a dream. He had everything to lose if the company tanked, so why fire someone quietly auditing Westlake unless... Nathan stood, a chill crawling up his spine, unless Rebecca had found something. He opened her performance reviews, stellar. Her report saved millions in Asia Pacific over the fiscal years, and her final audit file, the one tied to Westlake, had vanished, deleted by admin access 3 days before her termination. Someone had wiped her digital trail, but not cleanly enough. He picked up his phone. Becca. There was a pause on the line. What do you want? She said, her voice tight. I need to see you. I said you get a week, and I'm already out of time. Please, more. Silence. Where? He gave her the name of a coffee shop in Soho. Quiet, discreet. It was where she used to go when she needed to think. It wasn't a coincidence. She showed up 20 minutes late, hair pulled into a no-nonsense bun, sunglasses on despite the cloudy day. She looked tired, but not weak. He handed her a tablet. This is what I found. Someone erased your audit of Westlake. Your name was removed from the metadata, and Thomas signed your termination. Becca's expression didn't change. Not at first, but her fingers curled tighter round her coffee cup. I thought so, she said finally. You knew. I suspected. When I was laid off, I knew it wasn't about budget. I deflagged some discrepancies in Westlake's Asia subsidiary. The numbers didn't align with their reported assets. I was building a case. Quietly. Nathan leaned forward. Do you have it? She looked him in the eye. Would I be here if I didn't? Then we need to go to the board. No, she said quickly. Not yet. Why not? Because Thomas doesn't work alone. Nathan froze. What are you saying? I'm saying he's not just trying to push through a bad deal. He's trying to bury the company in it. I think he's shorting Pierce stock through offshore accounts. Once Westlake crashes us, he cashes in. Nathan stared at her, disbelief giving way to something worse. Recognition. That's impossible. You know it's not. His stomach churned. What about Lily? He asked. Becca flinched. She doesn't know any of this, and she can't. Rebecca. If Thomas is willing to manipulate the board, he's willing to do worse. She cut in. You think it was an accident she ended up in that layoff package? He's sending a message. He knows. Nathan sat back, cold now. He knows Lily is mine. Becca nodded. You can't prove it, he said, grasping at the one thing that gave him leverage. He'd never say it. No, but he doesn't have to. If this goes public, if people start asking questions about her, about me, you think Thomas won't use it? There was no answer. Only the distant hiss of the espresso machine behind them and the low hum of danger, growing between the lines of everything they weren't saying. You still want to be in her life? Becca asked. He didn't hesitate. Yes. Then you protect her, quietly, while I finish what I started. And after that, her jaw tightened. We'll see. As they stood to leave, Nathan turned back one last time. He won't stop. Neither. But as Becca stepped into the street, Nathan noticed something across the intersection. A man in a gray coat, standing still, staring at them. The moment their eyes met, the man turned, vanishing into the crowd. Nathan didn't believe in coincidences. He believed in power and motive, and he was starting to believe that this went far deeper than a child's revelation. It was war, and someone had already taken the first shot. Absolutely. Here's part 4. Building on the tension and expanding the story into a full-blown corporate conspiracy, psychological warfare, and parental reckoning. This section deepens Thomas's role as an antagonist and starts to expose just how calculated and personal his revenge is. The emotional undercurrents between Nathan, Becca, and Lily also begin to shift as they realize just how high the stakes are. Nathan had always believed in numbers. Numbers were clean, predictable, immune to betrayal. You couldn't manipulate math with ambition or emotion. But now, staring at the security feed in his office, watching a man in a gray coat appear at least for different locations from earlier that week, he knew numbers could lie if the wrong hands held the ledger, and someone was playing a long game. Natalie, he said into the intercom, his voice low and clipped. Have our cybersecurity team sweep the building, access logs, internal network flags, offsite pings. Everything, yes. Mr. Pierce, should I alert Mr. Harrington? Nathan's hand, still on the desk. A pause, cold and absolute. No, he said, do not tell Thomas anything. He ended the call and leaned back in his chair. From this angle, the city stretched below him like a chessboard, and somewhere, Thomas Harrington had already moved half the pieces. By nightfall, Nathan was back in his penthouse, alone, but not really. Lily's presence lingered everywhere now. A unicorn sticker on the side of his glass desk, a sock tiny, glittery, mismatched on the Persian rug, a drawing, made with markers and intensity, taped unevenly to the fridge. 3 stick figures, all holding hands beneath a blazing yellow sun. One of them wore a crown. He was still staring at it when his phone buzzed. A known number. She's more like you than you think. Curious. Brave. Reckless. Another message followed. Keep poking into Westlake and she'll learn just how cold this world can be. Choose wisely. Nathan's blood went ice cold. His hands curled into fists. Phone cracking slightly under pressure. He called Becca. You need to get her out of the city. Tonight. Becca's voice was breathless. Why? What happened? They're watching us. They're watching her. She didn't ask who. She didn't need to. I'll take her to my sister's, Becca said quickly. Brooklyn. No one knows she moved last month. Text me when you're there. I'm going to Thomas. Nathan. But he'd already ended the call. Thomas's office in Pierce Tower was dark, but not empty. He was there, seated behind his desk, a drink in one hand, and the city glowing behind him. A villain out of a perfectly rehearsed scene. I was wondering when you'd show. he said without looking up. Nathan walked in and closed the door slowly. You sent the message? I've sent a lot of messages lately. He sipped his drink. You should be more specific. You're threatening a child now? Nathan's voice was calm, but it carried that edge, the one that had a nerve CEOs, governors, and venture capitalists alike. Thomas's smile was slow. I'm merely reminding you what you stand to lose. You always were the type to ignore consequences until they walked into your lobby wearing a pink backpack. Nathan moved like a storm, crossing the office and slamming both hands on the desk. What the hell do you want? Thomas met his gaze evenly. What I've always wanted. Balance. Nathan blinked. Balance? You destroyed James. Thomas said quietly, you dismantled him, piece by piece, publicly, privately, financially. You told yourself it was business, that it was necessary. Nathan froze. The name hit like a blow. You always called it a strategic acquisition. What a phrase. It even sounds clean. But I saw what it did. What you did. I watched my sister bury her husband while you got named Visionary of the Year. That's your legacy, Nathan, and now, it's time for you to feel it. You're using Lily. I'm leveling the field. Thomas stood now, his calm, unraveling, and don't insult me by pretending she's anything more than a very inconvenient truth. You didn't even know she existed. You wouldn't have known if I hadn't let her mother go. You're proud of that. I'm proud, Thomas said, walking around the desk slowly, that I found the one blind spot Nathan Pierce couldn't hedge against. Family, real, human stakes. Because numbers, markets, you always win those games. But now the game has changed. Nathan's hands were clenched at his sides. Everything you love, Thomas whispered, is exposed? Nathan let the silence hang. Then, that was your mistake. Thomas frowned. You think you know me. You used to, but people change. Nathan's voice was calm now. Calculated, every inch the CEO. I didn't care before. I wouldn't have. Fought for her, for Becca. But now, you're playing with something bigger than revenge. You're threatening my blood. He turned and walked toward the door. And I'm going to burn you down for it. Thomas chuckled, but it was tight. Less confident. You have no proof. He called after him. Nothing ties me to offshore accounts or surveillance. I will, Nathan said, because unlike you, I don't need to destroy people to win. I just need to expose them. He left Dot and Thomas alone now, stood perfectly still for a long, long time. Later that night, in a modest Brooklyn walk-up, Lily sat cross-legged on her aunt's couch with a stuffed koala in her lap. Why do we have to sleep here tonight? She asked. Rebecca forced a smile. It's a special sleepover. You like Aunt Sarah's puzzles. Remember? Lily nodded, but her eyes were searching. Mommy, are you scared? Becca didn't answer right away. Then she knelt beside her daughter and pulled her close. No, baby, she said softly. I'm angry, and sometimes when people are scared, they get small. But when they're angry for the right reasons, they get loud. Are we gonna be loud? Becca smiled, a warrior smile. Oh, yes. Behind them, the TV flickered with a news report. The words Pierce Investments and pending acquisition flashed across the ticker. But in the shadows beyond the apartment window, another figure watched. A camera lens glinted once, then disappeared. The war wasn't coming. It had already begun. The moon hung low and full over the Connecticut estate like a pale, unblinking eye. It was nearly 2 a.m. The world should have been asleep. But inside the sprawling mansion Nathan had once called a fortress, lined with retina scanners, encrypted, gates, armed security, and miles of perimeter surveillance, no one was sleeping. Becca stood barefoot in the kitchen, still in yesterday's jeans, her fingers wide around a coffee mug that had long since gone cold. Her mind raced through scenarios like falling dominoes, none of them good. Lily slept upstairs, tucked beneath a mountain of blankets in a room larger than their entire apartment. Nathan had sat beside her for an hour, reading quietly by lamplight, until her breathing evened and her hands unclenched from the stuffed koala. She hadn't let go of Inday's Dot, but now, the walls felt thinner, the house too quiet, and Becca knew Thomas was done hiding. She had seen the signs, the reactivated offshore accounts traced to a subsidiary of Artemis Global, an old alias she'd flagged 3 years ago in an unrelated audit and filed away, unknowing. She hadn't realized until last night that it had never been unrelated at all. And then came the video, a single email, no subject line. Inside, grainy security footage of Lily standing outside her school, alone, waiting for her teacher, a man, face blurred, but build unmistakable, just watching. Becca had nearly collapsed when she saw it. Nathan hadn't said anything. He didn't need to. His fists had clenched, his jaw set, and then he made one call. Lock the house down. Now, the estate was on full alert. Armed guards patrolled the perimeter. Security drones swept the grounds. Internal panic rooms were activated and escape tunnels prepped. But even as Nathan monitored the feeds from the security hub deep beneath the West Wing, he felt something sour in his gut. It was the quiet and Thomas Harrington had never been one. The play defense at 2:17 a.m. A soft ping echoed from the console. Motion detected. Northeast perimeter. 3 signatures. Eyes on target, said the head of security. Voice tied through the comm. Thermals confirm weapons. We are engaged. Nathan bolted upright. Repeat that. Engaged. Returning fire. Advise you move your family to the vault. Another ping. Second breach. South tree line. 2 more. They weren't here to intimidate. They were here to finish it. Nathan ran. Through the marble halls. Past the gallery of family portraits. He barely looked at any more. He burst into Lily's room and found her still sleeping, peaceful, dreaming. Becca was already at the door, gun in hand, a weapon she hadn't touched in 6 years. Not since her father's death. She didn't ask what was happening. She saw it in Nathan's face. How many? Enough. Lily stirred. Mommy. Becca was at her side in an instant. SHH, baby, it's okay. We're going to play a game. Lily blinked, confused. Another spy game. That's right, Nathan said, lifting her gently into his arms. This one's extra special. We need to be fast and quiet. Is this about the bad man? The words stopped them cold. Becca's voice cracked. What do you mean? I saw him in the trees yesterday. He had a camera. Nathan exchanged a look with Becca, fury and terror, tightly coiled. They'd been watched for days. Go, he whispered. The family moved quickly, slipping into the serving corridor disguised behind the library shelves. A fingerprint scanner granted them access to the reinforced security vault, once built to house rare art, now serving as a last sanctuary. They barely made it inside before the first explosion rocked the south lawn. Lily screamed. Becca pulled her close. Nathan was already at the console, cameras flickering, smoke, gunfire. 2 of his guards down, a third crawling, wounded, and in the east wing. A shadow slipped through a broken panel of stained glass, tall, lean, moving, like he knew every inch of the estate. Because he did. Nathan's breath caught. It's Thomas. Becca's blood ran cold. How does he know? The security layout was designed with James. Nathan said hoarsely, and James was his brother-in-law. He knows the blind spots. That we're not safe here. Secondary tunnel, Nathan muttered, already pressing hidden switches. It leads to the garage. Armored vehicles inside. Another camera feed snapped on. Thomas was in the house, moving fast, heading west. Toward them, Becca clutched Lily's face in her hands. Listen to me, sweet girl. This is real. No more pretend. We need to go now. Lily nodded, eyes wide but brave. Nathan grabbed a pistol and flung open the back panel. The tunnel yawned before them, narrow, low ceiling, pitch dash black. They ran 20 yards. 50. Then it crashed behind them. A shout. Closer than expected. He knows the tunnel. Becca gasped. Faster. The garage was just ahead, lit by emergency lights. The armored SUV glowed under overhead fluorescence like salvation. But before Nathan could reach the driver door, it flew open. Thomas stepped out, gun raised, already aimed. Going somewhere? Nathan stepped in front of Becca and Lily, shielding them. Let them go. I warned you, Thomas said, voice calm as ice. But you couldn't help yourself. You had to dig, had to protect your little family. You're bluffing. You're not a killer. Thomas's smile was cold. You'd be amazed what grief unlocks. He pulled the trigger. The gun clicked, empty. Thomas blinked. That half second was all Nathan needed. He charged. The 2 men slammed into each other. Years of rivalry, of secrets and resentment. Crashing into fists and fury, Becca pulled Lily back into the tunnel. Heart pounding, she grabbed a wrench from a wall tool rack. Nathan pinned Thomas, but the other man kneed him hard and rolled free. He dove for the dropped weapon, just as Becca hurled the wrench. It struck his arm with a sickening crack. Thomas roared, twisting, but Nathan was on him again, disarming him fully, pinning him to the ground. Sirens wailed in the distance. Finally, Nathan's security team stormed the garage, guns raised, restraints ready. Thomas, bloody and breathless, looked up at Nathan, smiling through the pain. "You still don't get it, do you?" he whispered. "This isn't about money, or even Lily. It never was. Then what the hell was it?" Thomas laughed, bitter and broken. "It was about James, about balance. You stole his dream, Nathan, and now the world will watch you bleed to keep yours." Then he passed out. Nathan stepped back, breathing hard. His knuckles were raw. His heart was worse. Becca stepped out of the tunnel, Lily in her arms. And for the first time in hours, she let herself cry. But Lily, her cheeks streaked with dirt and tears, looked up at them both and asked, "Are the bad men gone?" Nathan dropped to his knees beside her. "Yes," he said, voice cracking. "We're safe now." But as dawn broke over the estate, the war was far from over, because revenge might be buried. But legacy never stays dead. The boardroom at Pierce Investments had never been quiet, not in 15 years, not through a single merger, acquisition, or quarterly bloodbath. Deals were hammered out like war, strategies executed like precision strikes, voices echoed through polished glass, and success always had a sound, ambition sharpened by certainty. But today, the room was silent, except for the soft clicking of folders being opened, page after page of damning truth. 12 board members, each with decades of experience, scanned the reports laid before them. Forensic audits, wire transfer receipts, dummy corporations and manipulated valuations, shell companies buried inside shell companies, and at the center of it all, Thomas Harrington. Fraud, embezzlement, conspiracy, and a picture of Lily, a small child caught in the crosshairs of a vendetta years in the making. "She's mine," Nathan said quietly, standing at the head of the table, and he used her for leverage to keep her mother silent. The board members stared at him, some stunned, others angry, a few already wondering what this meant for their public reputation. The oldest member, Eleanor Winters, who had once bounced Nathan on her knee after his parents' funeral, removed her glasses slowly. Her voice was low but firm. "You're saying your CFO attempted to destabilize this company and used your child as a weapon?" Nathan nodded. "He knew she existed long before I did. He orchestrated a layoff to push Rebecca Mitchell, her mother, out of the company and buried her audit reports to hide Westlake's offshore debt. And when I started getting close, he tried to frighten her into silence, surveillance, threats. He sent armed men to my home." Several board members flinched. None spoke. Across the room, Becca sat, still and composed, but not silent. She didn't cower. She didn't plead. She wasn't just a mother anymore. She was the whistleblower who had nearly been erased. "I stayed quiet for 6 years, she said, "not because I was afraid of exposure, but because I didn't want to become someone's scandal. I didn't want Lily to become a weapon. But that silence almost cost us our lives." The documents were complete. There was no arguing the numbers. Even Pierce's most skeptical old guard members could read a ledger, and Thomas Harrington had written his confession in every siphon sent. "I move that we terminate Thomas Harrington immediately," said the General Counsel, "and refer all evidence to the Department of Justice." Seconded. The vote was unanimous. When it was done, Nathan sat back in his chair, bone-weary. He glanced at Becca, who gave him the slightest nod, but the relief was short-lived, because outside the glass tower, the press had already learned everything. By noon, the headlines screamed, "Billionaire's hidden daughter at center of corporate fraud scandal. Wall Street's golden boy brought down by illegitimate heir. The Rebecca Mitchell files. Whistleblower, mother, survivor." Nathan's phone buzzed with calls from journalists, senators, clients, and shareholders. Becca's inbox flooded with speaking requests, interview offers, and threats. Lily's picture, the same one she'd drawn in marker on Nathan's fridge, was now all over the internet. They were exposed, and in the quiet of his penthouse later that night, Nathan stared at the blinking cursor of a blank resignation letter. Becca came in, holding 2 mugs of tea. She sat across from him, her face unreadable. "You're not the villain in this story," she said. "Maybe not," he murmured. "But I built a system where a man like Thomas could thrive. I let him in. I protected him for years. You trusted him. That's not a crime. No, he said. But keeping you out, that might have been. Becca looked at him for a long moment. What are you going to do? Nathan reached for her hand. He didn't hold it. Not yet. But he didn't let it go either. I'm going to step down. For now, let the company stabilize. Let someone else clean the blood off the walls. And after, I'll rebuild. Differently, smarter, cleaner. He looked her in the eye. With you. If you'll let me. She didn't answer. Not yet. Because that night, while Lily slept in the next room, unaware of the way her name now echoed across headlines, Becca pulled a letter from her coat pocket. Yellowed, faded, unsent. She handed it to Nathan. He unfolded it slowly. It was dated 6.5 years ago. Dear Nathan, I found out today. I wasn't going to tell you. But then I heard you laugh in the hallway and realized how much I wanted her to know that sound. I'm scared and angry. But I want you to know I never planned to disappear. I just didn't know how to stay. Nathan closed his eyes. You wrote this? I did. But I never sent it. Why? Because your assistant intercepted it. A week later, Thomas offered me a voluntary exit, said it was to avoid a scandal. Nathan felt the world tilt. Even then, Thomas had been. Tightening the noose. He stood suddenly, walking toward the floor-to-ceiling windows. The skyline looked like a lie. I let her down, he whispered. Becca came beside him. No. You showed up. They stood together in silence until Lily's voice broke through from the hallway. Daddy. He turned. Lily stood in her pajamas, koala in hand, blinking sleepily. Are we still famous? He smiled, walking over and lifting her into his arms. Probably, but don't worry. It'll wear off. Good, she muttered, curling into his neck. I like us better when it's just us. Becca watched them, the billionaire and the daughter he'd never known he needed, and finally let herself exhale. They had survived. But survival wasn't the end. It was only the beginning. 2 months later, Pierce Investments unveiled a new division, one focused entirely on financial transparency, whistleblower protection, and rebuilding corporate trust. Its director, Rebecca Mitchell, Nathan stayed off the front pages, but not out of his daughter's life. He dropped her off at school, sat front row at her science fair, and every Sunday, they made pancakes from scratch, even if Nathan still struggled to crack eggs without ruining them. The story never truly left the press, but it stopped being a scandal. It became a second chance, and sometimes in the quietest moments, when Lily fell asleep between them on the couch, a bedtime book slipping from her fingers. Becca would look over at Nathan and realize the empire he'd built was impressive, but the family they built, that was real power, and not even betrayal could tear that down.